This podcast contains information and details relating to suicide. We urge anyone struggling with their emotions to contact Lifeline on 13 11 14, 13 11 14, or visit them at lifeline.org.au. A 24-year-old devoted mother of two, fleeing a violent relationship.
That's my mum. I will see you soon.
Bags packed. Car running. Her daughters strapped into the back seat.
Mum told me that she needed to go back inside to grab something.
Panic.
Amy's dead, sir. Amy's dead, eh?
Confusion.
Well, in about 5 minutes, they said, no, it's a suicide.
100% this is a murder scene.
What do you think is really the honest truth about Amy?
The truth about Amy.
Until we meet again.
Live from Perth, this is 7 News with Susanna Carr and Rick Arden.
Good evening. The death of a young Perth mother found with a gunshot wound in her Serpentine home has haunted her family for more than a decade. Amy Wensley's death was initially ruled a suicide, but doubts have always remained.
And rightly so. Doubts are plenty. Welcome to our first bonus episode of The Truth About Amy. I'm Liam Bartlett.
And I'm Alison Sandy. We'll be publishing these each and every time we have some news to report on the case.
And the meeting between Amy Wensley's family and WA Attorney General Tony Booty certainly meets that criteria.
Today, finally, fresh hope in their fight for justice over their daughter's death, sitting down face to face with the Attorney General for the first time.
No one has had the time to sit down. Well, they didn't want to have the time to sit down with us and listen to us and our concerns.
A 2021 inquest delivered an open finding, meaning it couldn't be determined whether Ms Wensley's death was a suicide, homicide or an accident. That's despite multiple experts concluding Amy couldn't possibly have killed herself.
The evidence I gained from that room, it was obvious to me that she didn't shoot herself.
Her daughters are going through this every single day as well. And they want answers too. It's not just us, it's them as well.
I can tell you police have reopened the investigation into Amy Wensley's death. They're conducting a thorough review and reassessing all available evidence.
This is an excerpt of the news story which aired on 7's 6pm bulletin in Perth on the 30th of June. We'll have more of that interview with Nancy and Rick soon. But just a reminder of how it came about. Amy's aunt, Anna Davey, sent various emails requesting a meeting with Dr. Booty.
Dear Dr. Booty, I wrote to you on the 3rd of June 2025 and I'm hoping you were able to take the time to consider my request to meet with me and discuss my niece's case. It would be very much appreciated if you could confirm with me one way or the other if you were willing to speak with me. There are no expectations should you agree to meet with us. We would just appreciate being granted the opportunity to be able to tell you about Amy directly, rather than you making your mind up based on advice from advisors, stakeholders or media articles. I hope to hear from you soon. Kind regards, Anna Davey.
Her correspondence was prompted by a breakthrough in the Courtney Anderson case. After we featured it in this podcast and her family met with Queensland Attorney General Deb Frecklington.
So this morning we had a phone call from Deb Frecklington and she has told us that she has used her powers to instruct the coroner to hold an inquest into Courtney's case. I knew you'd be happy.
And you'll recall, Courtney's death, like Amy's, as we discussed, was ruled suicide under very suspicious circumstances.
On April 1 last year, Courtney's boyfriend, Ashley Campbell, was at the wheel of the Toyota Hilux travelling south on the Bruce Highway near Gladstone. He told police Courtney opened the door while the vehicle was travelling 80 kilometres an hour. Campbell claimed they'd been fighting all day and were talking it out when Courtney suddenly jumped to her death.
We contacted Deb Frecklington's office about how there appeared to be a significant amount of conjecture over who supported the scenario offered by Ashley Campbell. And just a week later, Al, I understand you and the 7 News team in Brisbane met with her at her office, where she told you exclusively that she was ordering an inquest.
Correct, Liam. It was myself, veteran journalist and presenter Katrina Blowers, and our expert cameraman Mitch. The interview took place at 1 William Street, Brisbane, or as the locals call it, 1 Big Willie. It's where all the ministerial offices are, as well as the premiers, and just across the road from Parliament House. Before the meeting, we caught up with the AG's Chief of Staff, Ben Murphy, and Senior Media Advisor, Rebecca Nardi. As you know, Ben used to work in the Brisbane newsroom with us. Then we caught up with Deb Frecklington. I don't mind saying it's very different from the reception we've received in WA to date. It's like the difference between The West Wing and House of Cards. Just for some background, the Liberal National Party won government here in Queensland on the 26th of October last year, so Deb Frecklington has only been in the role a short time. Queensland is traditionally a Labor state. The party has been in power for 30 of the past 40 years, but for a brief term in government under Campbell Newman from 2012 to 2015 and Rob Borbidge from 1996 to 1998. And maybe that's part of the reason Deb Frecklington seems so real. There's no arrogance. She remains compassionate.
Well, like all of these stories, I mean, they're undeniably tragic. And so when I was, obviously, when I became the Attorney General, many of these matters come across my desk. And so when Courtney's story, really hit, became public, I could say, if I could say it that way. And some family members and, in fact, friends actually wrote to me in this role a couple of months ago. And, we had a look at it. And then I actually met with the family. So after meeting with them and I, had access to that more information from the family, I was persuaded to say, look, let's just get to work. Let's not put this family through any more pain. And that's why I've instructed the coroner to have an investigation into Courtney's death.
Can you explain to us what hoops needed to be jumped through in order to get us to where we are?
Well, basically what the process is, a family of a loved one can apply to the coroner to investigate a death. And that there is a normal process with many, which many people go through. They apply to the coroner. It can take months and months, over 6 months at times, for the coroners to review that information and the information before them. And then they, if they are minded to, they can order an inquest, or they can say there's nothing more to be done in this matter. Now, the powers that the Attorney General has in Queensland is a really big power, which is enabling me to make the decision based on information provided to me to order the coroner to start the inquest immediately. And that's not a power that I take lightly. And it's one that, I was very persuaded by Courtney's parents and loved ones because there is that extra information there, and it is important that the coroner gets to work, has a look at this information, and hopefully get justice for Courtney.
Clearly, the Attorney General and her staff were open-minded going into this meeting with the family, which seems to make all the difference.
They're just so undeniably passionate about the cause of Courtney's passing, and the circumstances surrounding that really did persuade me in considering this matter further. Like I said, I didn't take it lightly. I actually, came back, I spoke to my office, and we worked through the processes. And like I say, it's not a decision I can make lightly, and nor is it one that I should take lightly. So after considering the new information that was provided to me, I couldn't not act. And I also wanted to ensure that the family didn't have to go through any more pain of the application process to the coroner, going through all of that when I could make the decision, which is what I've done, and that's why this inquest has been ordered.
Now, as we saw with Amy's case, it can take some time for the inquest to actually happen. But fortunately, in Courtney's case, now that the Attorney-General is directly involved, it won't experience the same kinds of delays. While a date is yet to be determined, it will happen next year.
That will enable the coroner to be able to compel witnesses, seek expert advice from obviously experts into not only the circumstances surrounding, but information that has come to light. They'll have the investigative powers into the matter, and hopefully that justice, can be will be there for Courtney, but also maybe that her family are able to rest easier at night, having an outcome of this investigation.
We didn't get to catch up with Dr. Booty after his meeting with Amy's family and didn't push it because of the ongoing investigation ahead of the updated brief of evidence being sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions. However, should the family need his help if the DPP decides not to prosecute, hopefully Dr. Booty will show the same level of care and consideration as Deb Frecklington, because the laws in WA are not dissimilar to those in Queensland.
Yes, Al, it's very interesting, isn't it? I love what you're saying, making the point about Deb Frecklington and the office, more importantly, being open-minded. It's so important, isn't it, in the pursuit of justice generally, but also the way these offices work, the way referrals come and go through them, and just that compassion to meet the family, do the right thing. No downside. It's the Attorney-General doing their job in the interests of the people who pay them for that role. It's marvellous. I think you've made that point really well. But talking about the similarities in the laws, now, according to the WA Coroners Act of 1996, under Section 22, Part 1, subsection D, the Attorney-General has the authority to direct a coroner to hold an inquest. Under Section 52, Part 3, subsection C and D, a new inquest can be called if, and I'm quoting, it is desirable because of new facts or evidence, and the findings are, again, quote, against the evidence or the weight of evidence. Now, that's a hugely wide ambit.
Yeah.
But remember, it's been more than a decade since the DPP has seen the file on Amy Wensley. That was when then Deputy Coroner Evelyn Vicker decided that the evidence did not support suicide and even demonstrated as much.
I can remember at one stage getting down behind the door of my office and saying, it's just not, in my view, physically possible. I got asked, have you ever handled a shotgun? Well, it just so happened, yes, I had handled a side-by-side shotgun.
Now, Evelyn was of the expectation, of course, that police would be pressed to treat it as a homicide and would closely monitor the key witnesses. But, as pointed out at the 2021 inquest, Detective Senior Sergeant McDonald said that would only happen if the case was being treated as a homicide. Listeners will recall this in episode 16.
It was dealt with as a coronial matter and not a criminal matter.
Just a reminder, this is a voice actor, of course. We don't have a recording of what was actually said at the inquest.
So Operation Jundee was never meant to be more than a tick and flick exercise, which was a concern to Detective Senior Constable Anne Lahane, and explains why there wasn't much, if any, probing of the answers given by David Simmons and Gareth Price.
Yeah, exactly, Al. And as we've been saying all along, this is the first time that WAPOL, well, supposedly the first time, and I'm not being cute about that. I'm saying it because it's yet to be confirmed to us, but we think it's the first time WAPOL is investigating Amy's death as a possible homicide. because they are saying they are, but there have been missteps and road bumps in the past. Anyway, we'll have more on that later in this episode, but it's worth noting that the police seem to take their time because despite announcing a new investigative team being appointed about halfway through last year, when we launched this podcast, very little seems to have been done until April this year, when season 2 of the podcast got underway. And that was after Anna, Amy's aunt, appealed to the Crime and Corruption Commission in WA.
Yes, for anyone who's dealt with the CCC, you'll know they don't give much away. So while there were positive rumblings, they were looking into it, there's no guarantee the Wensley case file would get the oversight it desperately needs.
Well, we got nowhere with the police minister when we asked him about it. He just made some glib comment about WAPOL taking the case very seriously. Of course they are. But the minister, the new minister, I might add, refused to be drawn on what made him so sure.
You're the new minister, I know, but have you been briefed on that case, on her death and those earlier inquiries and the mistakes that were made?
Yes, I have.
So is it your judgment that they did bugger it up?
Jeff, I'll hold my own counsel. I have my own communications with the Commissioner.
Yes, that was an interesting exchange. I love Jeff Parry's little vernacular there because I think it sums it right up. They've completely buggered it up. Unfortunately, the family hasn't been afforded the same courtesy, though, because the Commissioner of Police has not spoken to them directly at any stage, and neither has he fronted the media about this investigation, which is another reason that Anna, Amy's aunt, appealed to the Attorney-General to meet with the family.
Amy's mum, Nancy, attended the meeting with her husband, Rick, who spoke to awaiting reporters straight after the meeting. The family's legal counsel, Peter Ward, was there, and Anna attended via video link. They were given about half an hour with the Attorney-General.
I mean, it sounds like he wasn't actually able to give you much, but how important is it for you just to be heard?
Oh, massive. Because no one, like I said, no one has had the time to sit down. Well, they didn't want to have the time to sit down with us and listen to us and our concerns. And the Attorney-General has, and we're so grateful.
Was he, I imagine he wasn't able to give you any commitment as such. Was he able to, commit to trying to later, like once the police review's done, or?
Once all the reports are in, then hopefully we can have another meeting and discuss that. Well, I can't really say much more about that.
Is your hope, I suppose, that, having his eyes on it and having his attention and having heard from you directly that, that will ensure that things are done properly this time?
Yes.
Yeah?
I hope so.
Yes.
But what did he need to hear? What was it that you need them to listen to?
Our concerns, our
information given out that we haven't had any response to, especially Nancy's sister.
Anna.
Yeah.
It's been such a long time, it must have felt quite emotional to finally have someone in power pay attention. You give me the impression you're overwhelmed.
Well, on Thursday it marked the 11th year. On Saturday was Tay's 15th birthday, So 2 days later, I've got to put this happy face on, celebrate my granddaughter's birthday without her mum there. It's not just hard for us as a family, but her daughters are going through this every single day as well. And they want answers too. It's not just us, it's them as well.
Makes every special day a bit sour, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But, her daughter had a really good birthday. That was the main thing, that she enjoyed herself.
Can I ask, does her daughter talk about her mum? Do you?
The sad thing is, it was 2 days before her 4th birthday, so she can't remember her mother's voice, her mother's laugh, nothing like that, because she spent the last 11 years with us. The eldest one can remember bits and pieces, but it's just sad because Amy should be here raising her daughters, not us.
Is that why, do you feel the weight of responsibility to not let this rest, to make sure you see it through to the very end?
Yes.
Yeah.
And to get it not being suicide, get that taken off the table for her daughters.
Why is it so important?
I don't want them growing up thinking that their mother committed suicide when she didn't.
Because she would never have left them, seems to be the consensus.
She wouldn't have put her daughter's birthday present in the boot of her car and tell her girls, we're going to Nan and Pop's and staying there, and then strap them in the car and go inside and do that while they're waiting in the car with the birthday present.
Doesn't make sense.
Can you articulate how frustrating the process has been then, that it's taking this long? And
it's frustrating because, like Anna said, she was on Zoom, but she's giving all this information and
not getting any
answers,
feedback. Answers, yeah.
Are you hoping today turns that corner?
I'm hoping, and I'm hoping that we have the Attorney General's support on this.
Given any targeted time frame of how long they expect the new process to take?
No.
Yeah, I suppose, unfortunately, you've already had to wait 11 years.
I'm just hoping that this investigation is done properly and not biased.
Do you trust the police to be the ones re-investigating? I suppose you have no choice, really.
Not really.
Not that we don't dislike the police, but we just think it's like anything. It's like a culture. You've got people up that's high, and then people below are too scared. It's like anywhere.
But that's why the hope is if you have people checking their work
100%
like this,
Yes.
that the police will be crossing every T and dotting every I.
Yes.
It's a positive thing we're here.
Yeah, well, that's right. It is a positive thing we're here, and we really, really appreciate the Attorney General meeting us today.
Now, I'm glad they discussed the possibility of everything being checked, Al, because there are quite a few questions that police investigations to date have yet to clarify. It's quite a long list of questions. These have been provided to the Attorney General by Anna at their recent meeting, which I thought was a very good move, smart move on Anna's behalf. Firstly, where did the gun land after Amy was shot? Was it on her lap, as Gareth said, and has said time and time again, repeatedly? Stock of the weapon near her feet and muzzle towards her head?
Yes, so Anna said that she wants this clarified when she gets a report back or the police report goes to the DPP. Now, as we know, Liam, from our interviews with Professor Tim Ackland and Scott Roeder, there's absolutely no way the gun could have landed there.
Clearly, the gun could not have been discharged in that position, and the biological material, etc., and the entry and exit wounds being in the way they were in the photographic evidence. So someone has put that gun there.
The gun did not end up like that. The gun was placed like that.
Which means it had to be placed in that position.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. There was only one person who had the opportunity to enter that room after Amy went back inside after packing the car, and there's even a witness to that occurring.
Second question. Given that blood was found between the barrels and the forestock, how did it get there? Did it run down the barrel while the shotgun was in a vertical position, as described by Gareth?
And Al, if the blood could have only got into that position by running down the outside of the barrels, why was no blood found on the barrels between the forestock and the muzzle? I mean, does that mean the gun, and this is super important, does it mean the gun had to have been wiped?
So important, right? I mean, yes. Police documents show there weren't any fingerprints on the gun, even under laser examination, Liam.
I mean, how is that possible? We know at least 3 people handled that gun in the hour immediately before police arrived. That's on the record, right? That's indisputable. Amy, obviously, whether by choice or not, but she took the picture, remember the selfie?
Yep.
Gareth, who admits to coming in and picking it up. And Robert Simmons, the father, he admits to taking the shells out, taking the cartridges out of the shotgun.
Exactly. But what is the likelihood of absolutely no fingerprints, not even partial, being on that gun? It's the sort of surface that fingerprints would be easily captured. So what is the likelihood of the gun being wiped?
Well, Al, it has to have been wiped by somebody, something. It has to have been touched. Right? If 3 people have touched that gun and the police found no prints on that weapon at all, somebody somewhere has wiped it. Why have they wiped it? Why has it been touched? Because it is a physical impossibility. This is not Inspector Clouseau stuff. This is pretty straightforward. It's physically impossible for that gun not to have been wiped. And I still want to know why the father, Robert Simmons, actually unloaded that weapon, walked into that room, saw that scene, decided that he would pick that gun up and unload the weapon. Why did he even touch that weapon? He has been on record as saying it was a safety.
Yes.
A safety thing, correct. Right? That's his reasoning, that it was for safety. But again, why? Who was going to come in that room? Who was going to touch the weapon full stop? If you walked into a room and you saw somebody in Amy's position physically and half her head was missing, I hate to be blunt about this, but let's just call it like it is. And there's a gun there, whichever point you want to believe, in whatever position, why would you lean down and pick it up and then crack the weapon and then take cartridges out? This is not a workplace HSE incident. This is not an occupational, safety issue. Why would you touch that gun?
Yeah, and he knew that this was the gun that had been fired too. So if it was a safety thing as to being scared that somebody's going to come around the corner and shoot you, that's the gun over there. But also, and I think this is something that I just still don't understand how they could, dodge this as being important evidence, is why, when he had the call, right, had he come through the door, gone straight for the gun, he already knew that someone had been shot. So why would you not be looking for the person who had been shot? He said he didn't see Amy, but you couldn't get through the door without pushing it to, there's something there, right? So why wouldn't you look behind the door to see what's blocking the door?
Impossible. I think impossible. That's my personal opinion. I've seen the room. I've seen the mocked up version of the room. I've seen both. Seen the model and the real thing. I think it's impossible. That's my personal opinion. Yeah. And I think you're spot on. I think the quality of that act needs to be explored a heck of a lot further. And hopefully there are some smart minds in Wapol who are doing just that. But I think that one little episode can tell us a huge part, bigger part of that story and open up other avenues. So I couldn't agree more, Al. So just going a bit deeper before we leave that alone, was Robert Simmons pressed on this by the police? Because we've already said, supposedly he's the last to touch that weapon before the 3 police first arrived.
He's given various statements, Liam, but he's never been interrogated. Not that anyone's actually been interrogated in this case, but he's never been questioned about that. They haven't pushed it. And I seriously doubt that's happened even now, unless it happened in the past few weeks.
So here's the next question. Has Wapol consulted an independent expert on this?
Not at the time of the inquest, and police certainly didn't appear to be in any hurry to clarify this after the inquest, which is now 4 years ago, Liam. What I do know is David never got his guns back, which means Wapol must still have them, unless they've been lost.
Now, Al, a couple of questions we've asked in this podcast before, but which would definitely require clarification when Wapol updates the brief of evidence for the Director of Public Prosecutions, include the following. For starters, what happened to the grey khaki jacket that Robert described being on Amy's head when he first came across her?
She had a jacket over her head or something over her head, and I pulled it, just checked to see she was deceased. I thought it was a jacket, but a towel, a jacket, I don't know, you're in a panic, and I just lifted what was on her head. But yes, I thought it was a jacket.
That's consistent to what he said in both of his statements to police, made not long after Amy's death and in the lead up to the inquest.
There was a grey or khaki jacket over the person's head and upper body.
Yes, but panic or no panic, you know, wouldn't you, if it was a towel or a jacket? I mean, they are very different. So either way, what happened to it?
And of course, going back to the clothes David and Gareth were wearing that night, which, given the shooting, chopping of wood and the patting down of Amy's body, looking for a phone, would have had traces of those things on them, which Constable Larry Blandford pointed out in his evidence.
Well, Robert Simmons, told me that they were firing the gun all afternoon, the 410. And I can back this up by the fact that there was a skeet chucker in the shed and there was broken skeets all down the road, right? Clay pigeons, they call them, right? So they load them up, flick it out and then shoot it with the 410. They've been using the 410 all afternoon. They'd been cutting firewood, I believe, in the morning. So forensics say there was nothing on their clothes. That has to be considered. They're saying the police are saying that forensics didn't pick up any evidence of anything on their clothes.
No gunshot residue?
No gunshot residue, no blood, nothing. But 3 drops of blood were found on the shoes, and it was animal blood. Right, so if you dig a little bit deeper, David Simmons had time to change his clothes. If there's been a horrific incident, which he was involved in, he wants to exonerate himself, so he would change his clothes. And
So between the time of the shooting and the time that CCTV vision at the Roadhouse happens, there is time, you think, for a clothing change?
Oh, it takes me about a minute and a half to change, and I've got standard tracksuit pants and tops that I've got 5 pairs of each sort of thing, so I can look the same, but I've got clean clothes on. There should have been wood chips on them, and there also should have been gun residue.
From shooting the gun all afternoon?
From shooting the gun all afternoon. My theory is it's a break-back 410 shotgun. When you break it, both empty cartridges fire out back at you. And then they hit you, they tip upside down. You would have gun residue on your pants, around your belt line, your chest, because most people just hold it to the side and do it. But that's how you get this residue on you from a breakback.
And following on from that, why was Robert's first instinct to believe that his son had shot Amy? I mean, his explanation at this was, I think, fair to say, at best, sketchy.
If someone had killed themselves, the gun is not 2 metres over there, is it? And they don't pull a towel over their head. So when I ran outside, I'm thinking, my heart was, to me, there was no one else around. And just with my head spinning, all that going on at that particular time, what else do you think?
Other questions the police report to the Director of Public Prosecutions need to address, at least as outstanding questions, given there's no real explanation. Roberts said he disarmed the shotgun as a safety precaution, as we mentioned. Well, why not disarm all the guns in the room? If you're going to talk about safety, I mean, Amy's pink .22 rifle was also found on the floor, not far away from her body.
Yeah, when Gareth suggested going to the main house to call an ambulance, why did David say his dad wasn't there when Roberts says he worked at home all the time?
And then why did David go back to get Amy's phone? What was the issue with the phone? Why did he need Amy's phone so badly, even in that sort of moment of stress and trauma? Why was her phone at the forefront of his mind? And more importantly, why pretend that that phone was his?
Yeah. Why did Amy pack her passport in her handbag if she was planning to kill herself? And why would she have killed herself at that time when her daughters were in the back seat of a car running, waiting for her, knowing they would be at the mercy of her violent partner? Why not get them to safety first?
Great question. Not to mention positioning the shotgun so you allow the bullet to enter your right temple at a slight downward trajectory, which requires Amy to hold it up and twist her body in contortions that can best be described as near impossible, but also very painful.
Yeah. Did Wapol ever find the cartridges Robert pulled out of the gun? And has anyone spoken to David Simmons' mum, Evelyn Fogarty, about what David has told her and what she's in turn told other people?
And this leads us to the question of whether the new investigation team has utilised the kind of technology which would usually be used in a homicide investigation, like, for instance, the careful and sometimes clandestine monitoring of key witnesses.
And did they listen to the 000 recordings of Robert and David Simmons on the day Amy died, or merely just read the transcripts?
Basically a probative investigation, Al, not just one which, like those previously, seeks to dismiss or pass off any evidence which doesn't fit that original suicide theory.
Now, Liam, I also wanted to discuss the biggest criminal trial of this year, Erin Patterson, the mushroom killer from Morwell, Victoria. This has dominated headlines for months now, and I'm sure our listeners are well briefed on the case. But just in case, let's set the scene. Morwell is a small town in Gippsland in the state's southeast, and has a population of less than 15,000 people.
Yeah, for 2 months the town was like Noosa in the school holidays, wasn't it? Every motel was full, probably all the camping grounds too, and that was just by the journalists and the influencers on the ground. Anyone with a B&B would have made a fortune, but probably the biggest winner out of it was the bloke who sold coffee at the cafe near the courthouse. Not bad coffee too, just by the by. But that gives you an idea of just how big that case was. Here's a snippet of the story on 7's Sunrise the day after.
Erin Patterson has spent her first night in prison as a convicted mass murderer after a jury found her guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder over a lethal lunch in 2023 where she served beef Wellington containing death cap mushrooms.
For more, let's bring in our experts, former Victorian homicide detective Charlie Bazzina and criminal defence lawyer Ruth Parker. Morning to both of you. We'll start with you, Charlie. What was your reaction to the verdict? A middle-aged mum living in country Victoria, now a mass murderer.
Good morning, guys. Look, I was a bit surprised. I thought it was such a complex case in the 8-week trial that it went, eight and a bit. So I think I was expecting possibly a hung jury given the complexities of it, but I think the jury have really applied themselves and come back with a true verdict, and I think it's a testament to the work that the Homicide Squad people have done.
Ruth, this was extremely interesting for the world, this case alone, but for the legal world, no doubt, really interesting to see some of the twists and turns, particularly when her legal team put her on the stand, Erin Patterson, to give her own evidence. Were you surprised by that?
Not really, Shervo, because unfortunately they were put in a position where she had clearly lied to police during her record of interview, and the only way that they were going to get her version across, or the version that the defence were promoting, was to call her and to put these things to her. But it must have been a terribly stressful situation. Calling your own client is always deeply uncomfortable. She was in the witness box for a number of days, but unfortunately I think that was the only choice that they had.
So, Ruth, do you think that ruined her case? There's some conflicting reports that she was combative and that she was convincing on the stand.
Look, it's hard to know because ultimately they need to be satisfied of the prosecution case beyond a reasonable doubt. But what the defence were confronted with was a number of lies in her record of interview, including the fact that she didn't own a food dehydrator, the dehydrator that was then recovered from the tip after they found a manual for a food dehydrator in her house. There were also some issues in relation to other comments she'd made, including to the media, on Facebook. So ultimately, I think it was a choice that they had to make, and they made the right one. But criminal trials are living things, and you can never predict the outcome.
Charlie, we're seeing some of the evidence come through CCTV. We're also seeing that the actual beef Wellington itself was examined. We now know that. We can see some of that evidence coming through. How important was it for detectives, I guess, to have their ducks in a row?
Well, it's extremely important because they only get one bite at the cherry. And they had to go with the best case possible. And this really involved a lot of medical evidence, toxicology evidence, so forth and so on in relation to, and witnesses also. So you go where the evidence takes you. And we've got electronic evidence. We saw them bring in the dog from the Federal Police to look for electronic devices. We've got the phones, etc., etc. So ultimately, very, very significant because the police know the high burden to prove a case beyond reasonable doubt. So, and this was one of the massive cases, and ultimately they're responsible to the family and to the community of Victoria to give them answers and bring someone to justice.
Ruth, as a defence lawyer, when did you think she's gone for? Was it the different colour plates? Was it the line? Because there are a lot of lies, you know, brought up in the court. When did you think, oh, she's gone here?
Well, look, I don't think I ever really formed that view until the verdict, but I thought that there were real issues with the lies, particularly around the food dehydrator. I think that there were lots of different conflicting versions, but I agree with Charlie, which was that, you know, after a few days, I thought that there was a real prospect of a hung jury because the other issue that the prosecution have was motive. And there wasn't really a powerful motive in this case. So it was a very unusual case in the sense that there were lots of conflicting accounts, there were lies told by the accused, and then there was a lack of motive. So this really could have gone either way, but ultimately the jury was satisfied beyond reasonable doubt on the evidence collected that she was guilty of murder on 3 counts and attempted murder on another. And so we really haven't seen a case like this before.
It's very likely Patterson will appeal, but everyone I spoke to covering the trial, Liam, was adamant she was guilty. However, as we've heard, many were dubious it would lead to a conviction. I've covered a lot of court cases, Liam, and it's fair to say Australian juries as a whole appear to be pretty conservative. Chris Dawson, Jared Baden-Clay, and now Erin Patterson all had one thing in common. They weren't likeable.
Yes, they all certainly lacked a bit of charisma, didn't they? Those people you just mentioned, not a lot of riz there between the three of them. Although there have been cases, I mean, look, the last one in Morwell with a Morwell jury, Greg Domasevich in the Jaden Lesky case.
Yes.
He got the not guilty verdict and he didn't appear very likeable on camera too. So there have been exceptions, but I agree with you. The sort of the vibe wasn't great, was it?
Yes, the castle was right. There is such a thing as the vibe, Liam.
It's just the vibe of the thing.
This is what one of our reporters on the scene, Tegan Doling, had to say about it.
Now, the jury completely thought that she was a liar. Despite taking to the stand and giving quite compelling evidence, they saw straight through her. They found her guilty of the 3 charges as well as that attempted murder charge too.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Look, I understand what you're saying, because if David Simmons is charged, regardless of whether he takes the stand, the jury will get an impression of the person he is and be able to consider whether he's capable or was capable of killing Amy. And they'll take into account lots of things like his love of guns, hunting, his general demeanour, his reputation.
His entire character, Liam.
Exactly. The prosecution would undoubtedly discuss the domestic violence history. For instance, the photo that we found with Amy, which was sent to her friend Erin, that the police had somehow lost. That was the one with her neck covered in bruises, allegedly after he tried to strangle her. Then there's David attempting to get Amy's pink phone, as we've mentioned before, and him denying that. despite the original police constables saying, no, that's exactly what happened. So the jury will have to decide what they believe there.
Yeah. Then there's his alcohol problem. The fact Amy was attempting to leave him.
And suing him for damages too, Al. Remember that. Amy was suing David following the car accident they had less than a year earlier. So they'll be looking, obviously, in that sense, for motive. Like the Patterson case, this case is complex, which is why the attention to detail and expertise, for instance, independent analysts who can do a risk assessment on David and Amy and all the circumstances surrounding her death. I mean, all that is very, very important, as well as, of course, his drug use and his alcohol abuse. Remember what his father Robert said at the inquest.
Well, when someone gets a beer out at 10 o'clock in the morning...
He blamed himself because David suddenly had so much more expendable income as he was now living rent-free.
I didn't realise by giving them that house that I'd actually made two mistakes. Suddenly I'd given them a whole heap more cash to buy drugs and alcohol because they're not paying any rent. So suddenly, if you've got this surplus, I realised looking back, doing the right thing ended up probably being the wrong thing.
Yeah, and an independent clinical psychologist could provide evidence on the use of the antidepressants, as Amy was still taking hers, we know that, but David suddenly came off his. Now, I've got a pretty basic understanding of antidepressants, but it's very interesting when you compare it to the Courtney Anderson case that we've been discussing, where there were claims supported by authorities that she had undiagnosed mental health issues, implying that that was why she jumped from a speeding car, Al. So, should it go to trial, the prosecution would surely want to address what the combination of methamphetamine and alcohol, as well as that sudden stoppage of antidepressant medication, would have on David Simmons' mental state. And, of course, assess his propensity for violence, as well as means and opportunity, which we've discussed at length during this podcast. That's a pretty big grab bag.
Yeah. The selfie will be discussed, of course, and why it was once considered evidence of suicide. I still don't get that, Liam. WAPOL initially used it to justify their case for suicide, despite it happening about 12 minutes prior to Amy's call with Nancy.
Yeah, the credibility of the witnesses, too, will also be a major determining factor, I think, for a jury. Well, it always is for a jury, Al. I mean, sure, they'll give more weight to the contradictions in statements and testimony made by David and Gareth and Josh than the detectives certainly did.
And Robert, who, don't forget, said in that 000 phone call that his son made a mistake. Quote.
And what does it take for a father to say that about his own son? It's fascinating, isn't it?
I don't understand.
Anyway, before we finish up, Al, I just want to raise one more point in relation to what Detective Inspector Gregory MacDonald said at the inquest. You'll recall he was the one who defended Operation Jundee, or Jundee, whatever it was, which is nothing short of a joke, I think. That's the understatement.
Yeah.
That was the major crime investigation that started the day after Amy died. And as we've discussed at length on this podcast, I think it's pretty safe to say the conclusion is that it was preordained, predetermined, and should be an embarrassment professionally for all the police who were involved in it. But the internal police review, interestingly enough, so this is not us, this is an independent look at Jundee, made 4 criticisms, and we've mentioned these before, including the lack of consideration for covert opportunities, to which he replied,
I would say that in order to make that approach, I would have had to make the determination that I considered that it was not a suicide and it was a homicide. So if I were to look at potentially telephone intercepts or other projects that might provide other evidence, I would have had to have been of the opinion that the death was suspicious. That was not my opinion at the time. I believed it was suicide.
My point is, if this new investigation didn't pursue these opportunities, then the Police Minister, Reece Whitby, is wrong about WAPOL taking this case seriously, because that certainly was not serious. Remember, Al, what the first coroner, Evelyn Vickers, said when she pulled the inquest.
It was just the fact that she didn't pull the trigger herself. So I pulled it, sent it to the DPP, because that's what the Act required me to do, hoping that if it was from the DPP, the police may have different investigative pathways for them that were not part of what I needed to be doing.
Then they're still not treating Amy's case as a homicide.
Agreed, Liam. McDonald said it himself at the inquest. So if they haven't done this in relation to Gareth, Joshua, David Simmons, and of course, David's parents, Robert and Evelyn, they always tell someone right, then this was just another ruse to look like they're taking it seriously.
Well, everything crossed, but of course we'll find out soon enough.
Thanks, Liam.
Thanks, Al. And we'll be back with another episode as soon as we have more information to give you.
If you knew Amy and have information about her death, we'd love to hear from you. Just email us at thetruthaboutamy@7.com.au or visit our website 7news.com.au/thetruthaboutamy. You can also send us an anonymous tip at www.thetruthaboutamy.com. Presenter and executive producer, Alison Sandy. Presenter and investigative journalist, Liam Bartlett. Sound design, Mark Wright. Assistant producer, Cassie Woodward. Vodcast editor, Carmen Bensley. Graphic artist, Jason Blandford. And special thanks to Brian Seymour and Jessica Evanson. This is a 7 News production.